Start, sir. Yeah.
Right. So great. I think we'll start. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome for this session today. It's the second session for the day. While it's a post-lunch topic, I believe it's an interesting topic. It's on last mile delivery, and it's around improving reliability and service level of e-commerce retail supply chain through last mile efficiencies. Right. I'm joined with an experienced panel of experts from various parts of the ecosystem e-commerce. Starting with, I think Bhaskar is yet to join, so I'll wait for his introduction. But first up, Mahesh Iyer from Stellar Value Chain, president of the company and also an alumni for the London Business School. Right, he's been a CFO at various large organizations in multiple real estate companies as well in his previous avatars. So hi, Mr. Mahesh.
Hi everybody.
Next, we have Dipanjan Banerjee. He joins in from Ecom Express. He's the Chief Business Officer and Senior Vice President at Ecom Express. He spent over 6 years with this organization. In total, he has about 15 years of experience in the sector and has also worked with companies like FedEx in the past as well, right? Kushal Rajveer joins us from Here Technologies. He is the head of supply chain, Asia Pacific, Oceania, and Japan. He spent almost 2 years now with Here. He has over and above a total experience of 16 years and has worked with certain marquee names in the sector like Konan Nagal, DB Shankar, Nuvo Logistics, and has a well-rounded understanding and experience around technology as well. Right. We also have Rajiv, who will kind of be also taking us through a few slides on this topic today. Rajiv joins us from FarEye. He's the regional sales director of the company. He looks after India and the subcontinent. He has in total a total of 3 decades of experience, right, in the IT industry in total, and he's had the opportunity to kind of work with many opportunities within the sector. Interesting profile, interesting experience that he brings on board, and he will take us through a few slides on this topic today. I'm not sure if Bhaskar is joined in yet, but I'll just kind of give his introduction for everyone's sake at this point. He will join in at a later point of this discussion. Bhaskar comes in from Flipkart. He's a vice president of supply chain there. He's worked about for 2.5 years at this company. In all, a total of 2 decades of experience with various organizations, including PepsiCo and Pfizer. So a real expert in supply chain who's kind of going to be pitching in on this topic as well today. So if I may ask Rajiv, if you want to kind of take this forward and put up your presentation for the next few minutes and run the audience through the topic.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Varun. Appreciate the quick introductions and good afternoon and hello to the panelists as well, the co-panelists. I'll share my screen and walk you through the presentation. Just want to ask before I start, is it going to be kind of a Q&A kind of presentation? Happy to answer questions along the way. Let's keep it interactive. That is the expectation. Just quickly sharing my screen. Please let me know when you're able to see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, so today's topic, essentially, what I'm going to cover in a few slides is the last mile delivery part of the supply chain, right? So I'll be talking about what impacts, what could be potential impact areas that sort of determine the challenges that we face today in the last mile delivery. Although the experience that we want to give the customer is that one of click, order, get a time slot for when they want it delivered and have it delivered and acknowledge delivery. So keep the process very simple keeping the customer in mind, right? So let's look at some of the things. Let's look at what's happening from an industry perspective and the growth of e-commerce per se in India specifically. Given the discussion is India specific, you can see the kind of trend here, right? I mean, e-commerce, and this is e-commerce spend of customers coming to e-commerce sites and spending, right? So this is the kind of spend that we're looking at a CAGR growth rate of about 21.4%, right? So given that kind of growth and given that customers are choosing to shop online as days go by, I think more and more businesses want to be prepared to basically, plan those deliveries to efficiently have them delivered to the customers and keeping customers' experience at the top of the mind, right? And ensuring that once the customers acquired, then they get to retain those customers as well, right? So let's look at what is so complex about the last mile, right? So right from the point of origin, from where the goods are picked up, from the time the e-commerce site has received an order, the ability to choose the right kind of fleets, right kind of transportation mechanism that you would want to use to deliver the goods to the customer, and then the other aspect that you need to look at is where are you going to deliver? Where does the customer want the goods to be delivered at, right? So these are three major aspects that we'll be looking at while looking at the complex last mile, and then look at the ways in which we can plan to efficiently deliver from, let's say, an in-store pickup to delivering it at the doorstep, the customer's doorstep. How can that happen, right? This is typical last mile, right? Or it could be a typical B2C scenario picked up from the distribution center and delivered directly to the customer. Or today's trend is dark stores, hyper-local deliveries, D2C deliveries, picking up from a dark store and having it delivered to the customer, assigning a transportation team that can pick it up from the dark store, deliver within a particular radius, or micro-fulfillment stores, and so on and so forth, right? So given the complexity, how do we sort of manage this well and plan the routes and optimize those routes for faster deliveries and to ensure that the delivery is completed, in a way the customer is expecting it to be completed, right? What can, other than the constraints that we looked at or the challenges that we looked at while planning or looking at the complexity of the last mile delivery itself, one of the things that we definitely ought to be looking out for is the traffic congestion. This is one of the challenges that we face in most of the large cities today. And how do we then, look at planning for identifying what are the traffic conditions, for example, in a city like Mumbai or Bengaluru or New Delhi, right? And this is where technology is evolving, and this is where technology comes into play. So we, for example, at Farai, work with multiple technology partners. Here, Technologies is our partner. They provide us with information through their mapping solutions that allows us to pick up various inputs that are coming in from the routes that we're trying to plan for, traffic scenarios, weather conditions, or any other scenarios that the delivery partner could be facing while planning those deliveries along many routes, right? So this is one element that I wanted to point out, but there are many other elements that we could pick up, from that are coming in from your mapping solution provider. We work with Here Technologies for that. Now, obviously, better deliveries are better for businesses because then you have happy customers. And given the scenario where 53% of the total shipping cost of getting the product delivered to the customer is in the last mile, right? Every e-commerce player, every transportation, every logistics head, supply chain head is looking at how do I bring my costs down, right? How do I bring my transportation costs down? How do I bring my delivery costs down? That is a challenge that everyone in the supply chain or the logistics team is looking at. And given that the spend is about 53% or maybe even higher in certain situations, route planning and route optimization becomes a key aspect of planning for your last mile deliveries, right? The other aspect that you might want to keep in mind is it's not about just delivering the product to the customer. It is also about providing an experience to the customer where the customer might want to return the product back to the store or to the point of origin because they want the product was not right, they want it exchanged, so on and so forth. And obviously, the statistics that we see here kind of alludes to the fact that 92% of the customers saying that we will buy something again if the return process is easy, right? And if businesses can make that process easy for customer, then I think they will end up retaining that customer more often than not, right? 86% says they're looking for easy return options. 81% says they will switch to a vendor who is willing to do that or give them an easy return process, right? So this is something which we need to keep in mind, and the technology should be able to then support the returns of goods as well back to origin or back to store wherever they want it, wherever it has to be returned, right? The other aspect is deliver from anywhere to everywhere, right? So I mentioned hyper-local deliveries. I mentioned D2C scenarios, right? So businesses are looking at making delivery time shorter. We were used to the 2 to 3 days delivery time frames, and that became same day deliveries. And now with the grocery deliveries that are available to you in 10-15 minutes or even less, right? The customer expectation is going up, and businesses want to differentiate and also want to provide that experience to the customer. And that means now they will have to be very close to the customer or deliver from a store or a dark store or a micro fulfillment center, which is, let's say, within a certain radius of the particular store, so that they can then deliver and keep the delivery promise. I will deliver, let's say, an apparel or a shirt or a trouser that somebody wants to buy within a couple of hours after placing an order, right? For example, and these are conversations that we are having with the potential customers and our customers that we work with. So I can tell you for sure that this is something which has been planned, right? And then how do we get that done efficiently, right? Given that we looked at a scenario where there's traffic congestion in larger cities, how do we then, bypass these conditions? How do we look at technology that can then help us bypass these conditions? Drone deliveries, for example, being one such option, right? EV integration could be another option, which I will talk about in a couple of slides later. But you can see delivery from anywhere to everywhere, right? Is the flavor of the day. I mean, that exactly is what is going to make that delivery promise better, delivery promise shorter as well for the customer, and also increases efficiency and probably reduces cost and also reduces the carbon footprint, right? And that is another thing that every business is looking at today. And customers are conscious about working with businesses who have initiatives addressing these issues as well. So, that is something which is very important. So what are those challenges? Some challenges that we want to talk about, right? Last mile sustainability challenges. Route optimization is definitely one of them. Why is it a challenge? For all the reasons that we kind of looked at in the previous slides, right? Route optimization is a challenge because how are you going to optimize routes, right? Is it pin code based? Is it area based? Ideally, if you have a technology that can provide you with the capability to do both, or choose between what is the right way of optimizing deliveries, where you're covering the maximum area and there are less overlaps, so that you have minimum number of delivery partners being used who are able to carry let's say optimized amount of deliveries in one go, right? So you deliver maximum, you cover it with the shortest path, and if you're using environment friendly EV based vehicles, for example, then that's another constraint you could add as well, right? So green fleet integration, reduction of carbon footprint, also keeping in mind compliance regulations, traffic compliance regulations, etc., and also giving you the ability to manage returns, right? So that is something which is key while planning for last mile delivery, right? So driving efficiency with last mile optimization is something that we at Farai do very well, and this is a slide that we use when we talk to customers most of the time. And we have something called dynamic route planning, which obviously happens because of our partnerships with companies like Here Technologies that we work very closely with. And you can see the scenarios before and after, right? And given that the kind of statistics that we've picked up here is that there is a 28% reduction in the number of trucks required if you have dynamically route optimized as against not having that capability to do that, right? So 28% reduction in the number of vehicles required, 13% fewer kilometers traveled. So fuel consumption, emission, cost of delivery, all of this contributes to making your deliveries better from any which way you look at it, right? If you will, do I have another 10 minutes? I'm sorry. I quickly wanted to play a video which is just
Yeah, please
some.
go for it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that quick video was basically to bring about and look at some of the benefits that technology can bring to the customer's table, right? In terms of planning for last mile, right? So literally, what do we enable because of the partnership that we have with Here, for example, with route planning and deliveries, right? So if you can see the enablement, the way technology brings those capabilities to the customer's table, right? Where you're planning for delivery orders, you're planning for against orchestrating your carrier, your carriers with skills, the kind of drivers you need. If you're carrying, for example, if you're delivering furniture, right, and you want the delivery to be made at a particular time slot, and you want to have somebody who has a skill to, let's say, put a dining table or a cot together, right? So mapping those skills to while orchestrating deliveries and planning for the transportation appropriate transportation partner, planning for capacity, traffic considerations, and any other inputs that you might want while planning, and obviously giving the customer the ability to choose a slot for deliveries, right? So that's an important aspect. We were talking to a customer recently who said, we have a 27% return rate, which is very high and quite alarming, and they were very disturbed as well. One of the challenges they had is they do not have a slot-based solution to give their customers. So, husband and wife working, you're delivering at a time when they're not at home, obviously it comes back. Their costs kind of, increases many folds, right? So creating that value where you can deliver on time, reduce carbon footprint, and obviously, give the customer the best experience that you want them to have, and then retain those customers is what we're all looking at, right? So where are we heading? What is the future? Obviously, you can see there are companies like Boxbot in the US that are looking at launching a self-driving vehicle, and I think these trials are already happening in the US. And probably very soon we'll hopefully get to see that in India as well, right? I know for a fact that there are many companies in India already trialing drone-based deliveries, for example, right? So whether it is wing copters, whether it is drone-based deliveries or EV integration that many companies are looking at, and we are actively talking to companies in the EV space who want to be part of the last mile route planning solutions available to customers. This is definitely a thing of the future, right? How do we optimize? I mean, we provide our customers with the ability to basically bring in multi-channel orders coming into many channels. It could be e-commerce, it could be orders from their stores, it could be B2B orders. We consolidate all of that. We give our customers the ability to orchestrate their carriers, plan the right vehicles with the right kind of goods, ability to then map all of this to a let's say a distribution center, from distribution center to the customer's doorstep, right? So it will be delivery to anywhere, delivery everywhere, home, stores, pick up or drop off point, so on and so forth, using different types of delivery mechanisms, own fleet, outsourced fleets, and obviously there's a gig economy out there, so crowdsourced fleets also play a role today, right? So that is basically what we do at Farai, and which is why we sort of position ourselves as a first choice for last mile solutions, the company. And that kind of concludes my presentation, gentlemen. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Rajiv. It's brilliant. I think brilliant coverage on the last mile point. My takeaway was broadly 4 themes that you kind of captured, right? One is around planning delivery. Second is timing the delivery. Third is being able to provide value-added services to the customer, right? With all this planning. And lastly, I think managing the whole delivery in a more sustainable way, right? Doing the right thing for the environment at the end of the day. Interesting. Quite a broad perspective and interesting perspective that you shared. So great. So I think if I have your permission, Rajiv, I think what we'll do is we will have the questions at the end. We'll kind of go through the panel session, and we'll have the questions at the end, and we'll kind of address those questions collectively, right?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. So I think I have Mr. Bhaskar also, who is joined in finally. Great. Hi, Bhaskar. So Bhaskar, the first question straight up for you.
Sorry, apologies for being late. There was a little bit of a hitch here, but yeah, finally I could make it.
No worries. Great. It's our pleasure to have you here. And I'd like to go straight up with you. And the first question actually for you, given that you're at the helm of things of a customer also, right, in a way, you know what customers are doing today, what demand trends are playing out, you know how the ecosystem is playing out, given where you are sitting at today. What, according to you, right, are you seeing as challenges in the last mile space, right? And especially if you've seen a change in trend pattern post the pandemic. So what are the challenges that you are seeing in customer behavior here?
So Varun, if I understand, there are 2 parts to the question. If I understand, one is the customer side of it, like how are they behaving? Yeah. And the second part is the whole ecosystem on the last mile, which I think Rajiv captured it commendably. Okay. I'll talk about what we are seeing from a customer point of view. Okay. And these are my basis, whatever data we have and the kind of inputs we have. Our senses, the things which are very constant pre and post pandemic, which is customers are demanding. Customers are expecting better and better service every day. The tolerance for failure is actually going down significantly, and that is being aided by the fact that they have multiple options. Yeah. So if you as a service provider is not able to satisfy them, then what I mean is then I can look at some other service provider. Okay. And I think what is also being done is we are weighting it by giving things like 10-minute delivery, 15 minutes delivery, creating appetite for a faster gratification from a customer point of view. Yeah. How much it is sustainable, the jury is still out, but I do believe that we are actually creating a kind of a customer demand space, which is very interesting because it's going to put a lot of challenge from the last mile point of view and various models which Rajiv spoke about. And there are multiple models which are, as we speak, is evolving just to address that customer need. So that from a customer point of view is extremely important. Besides, for certain and just to add to what Rajiv said, for certain category of products, there is also, we believe that there is an inherent need or unsatisfied need of value-added service, even in returns. So for example, in case of apparel, you want to try and buy, okay? Shoes, when you are delivering shoes, maybe you would like to give few more models, the customer would like to pick and choose. So getting that kind of a feeling which you get in a shop, how can I get it in the comfort of my home without stepping out? Okay, so that's the kind of frontier where we are trying to move into, right? You talk about putting up, somebody buys a large TV, or in tier 2, tier 3 towns, when someone buys a smartphone, he or she wants even the help to, how can you set it up for me? How can you configure it for me? How can you help me to kind of understand the phone? There are those kind of cohorts also, which we are seeing, which I believe is a white space at this point in time. If someone is able to address those needs, there is a demand there as well, right? Now, from a last mile perspective, as the customer becomes more demanding and his or her ask becomes more varied, right? The pressure on last mile increases, because amongst the various things which Rajiv spoke about, one of the things, especially from an e-commerce point of view, is also the real estate cost. So all the nodes which you keep closer to the customer generally happens in expensive real estate markets. All your fulfillment centers are away from the cities, right? You have the luxury of actually entering the city, but your service nodes are right there next to the customer. They are expensive. And within that same space, you need to know how to maximize these service offerings. And in my mind, that's one bit of a challenge from a last mile point of view. From what I have seen the business evolve from a simple, plain, flat surface, we are now talking about how do I take advantage of the cubic space rather than just the volume, even in the last mile. Okay, how can I, some of our partners actually have, and even competition has this advantage of, they use the last mile real estate more often. So instead of a single delivery, which used to happen, now you have 2 or 3 times delivery, right? So the same day deliveries which you find, okay, or slotted delivery, which you see, also works on how do I kind of use the same real estate to make multiple trips. Then I also find that what is changing, and these are obviously not only helping the customer in getting a better service, but it also leverages the cost you have, right? But it all kind of depends on, in my mind, in the current ecosystem, and maybe some of them may be repeat of what Rajiv said, is the address intelligence, right? Which today in India is extremely poor. So yeah, there are a lot of memes on your social media app where you says that people ke paid ke piche and all those stuff, delivery addresses, right? So those things makes it far more complicated, because customer is at the center of whatever we do, and there is no switching cost for a customer. If he doesn't like you, he or she can switch to another service player, right? So that's one area which I believe we need to look at. How do we have a better address intelligence? Second, I believe the workforce who are engaged in doing the customer service, right? That is right from picking up from your hub and delivering it to your customer. If you meet any one of them, whether they are from the food service or quick commerce or from e-commerce or any one of them, and try and have a chat with them and say, would you like your family to get into the business? The first answer is no. So it's not a very desired occupation, right? So that's one area where you see a lot of churn. And that's one area where we owe it. How do I make this job less stressful, given the traffic conditions, given the odd hours, the long hours, and the weight they carry on their backpacks? That's one opportunity area which I'm seeing. And post-pandemic, I also believe, and this is my personal belief, that the behavior is also shifting, and across. It doesn't matter at what state of the society you are. Today, the value for life is a little bit more. Okay, the understanding of that, well, I will draw a line somewhere. I will not kill myself to death by working, right? And everybody makes that choice. So some of the models and some of the expectations we had, that's also changing as in the post-pandemic era. So it means that we need to infuse far more technology to move goods in the last mile very precisely and deliver it to a demanding customer on time and in full, right? And ensure that experience, because if you look at e-commerce, right, the only human element is that guy who comes to your doorstep. Otherwise, everything is at the back end, right? It's very impersonal. So that space is one area which is also very important, because if there is a constant churn, the quality of that person who comes and delivers to your doorstep, how is he groomed, how is he being trained, also becomes equally important. So these, to my mind, are over and above what Rajiv spoke about, as I see the shifts which are happening in the last mile space.
Right, interesting. I think, essentially, if I had to sum it up, it's basically dil mange more by both the customer and the service agents as well, who were supporting you at the last mile, right? I think fairly put across. Rajiv, if I can ask you, I think you have your screen on sharing mode as yet. If you can just kind of end that.
Right.
Yes.
Apologies.
Thank you. No worries. No. Thank you. So thanks for that, Bhaskar. Interesting perspective. After that, I'd like to go straight up to Mr. Mahesh, right? I want to understand from your business perspective, right? I think Stellar clearly operates in a slightly more B2B setup compared to what it does than other parties in this ecosystem, right? I think just want to understand from your perspective, right? How are you able to kind of tackle challenges in last mile, especially because your last mile problems are slightly different as well, right? You also have to look at fleet sizes that you're engaging with. You may use a 407, you may use a 1-tonner, you may use bikers. So there's these interesting mix and matches that you have to kind of keep optimizing with time and again to remain profitable. So how are you tackling this problem statement at your end? Mahesh, you're on mute.
Sorry. So firstly, what you said is true. We do a lot more B2B, but we've just about started to get into the B2C business. And the cold chain that we run is predominantly B2B. In a few cases like Amul, we also do B2C. I agree with what Bhaskar is saying. The customer has become a lot more, desirous of the levels of efficiency and the levels of service that he's expecting. Because what he says is absolutely true. The ability to shift, to whether it's an e-com or it's whether a service provider like us, the ability to shift is almost simple for him. So what we are now trying to do, Stellar in any case was a solutions-based business. We did acquire Patel and Innovative, trying to do the regular transportation set of work. So, which is what I said. The regular networking business probably will continue, but whatever little I see, express business, as we understand, is almost dead. So what we now try to do over the last couple of months is actually try to get into solutions mode for most of our business, which means it's addressing the pickup as well as the delivery. The pickup, I would tend to agree with most that it's a slightly more easier operation to do, because I know what are the quantums that are coming. From the last mile delivery perspective, what we have now tried to do is, given the fact that we have 21 centers across the city, most of these, we've actually carved out a little space for the transportation piece, taken our own space. So this serves almost like a micro fulfillment center. And we are brand agnostic, so whoever wants to come, place it. So that for me is probably a larger plus point as compared to most of the other distribution guys. So we use that a lot more effectively as compared to most because it gives me the leverage to transport to 21 cities across the country. Two, maybe post a conversation, I agree, but tech has become one critical element here. Because like he says, was figuring out the load balancing, whether I do it for one vendor or whether I do it for multiple vendors, determines the kind of trucks or determines the kind of vehicle that I move around. Three, so basically what we're trying to do is four things. One is to do a customized solution. Two, do micro fulfillment centers, taking in leveraging the existing benefit. Three, EV. And what we are now trying to do is minimize the touch point. So rather than do from pickup to branch to hub to hub to a smaller hub, then to a branch, and then do this. What we are now trying to do at the back end with the help of tech, try and consolidate goods at one place, then move it. So from a typical, say, 12 or 13 touch points, what we've now tried to ascertain for most of our vendors, we should try and do 4 touch points. Pick up, hub, to the next hub, and then deliver straight. So these are 3 things that we are doing. But from the last mile delivery, I would agree with what Rajiv says. We are in fact desperately trying to figure out how to source out EVs. So that's one conversation that we're doing separately. The second conversation that we're doing internally is, in fact, we've taken a few of these EVs. We've actually bought a few of these EVs to try and do the last mile. One, it helps me in terms of being able to deliver a little more efficiently. Two, it also helps me figure out what I need to do in terms of congestion times. So if it's an EV and it's a cholo, it still gives me the option to deliver at a particular point in time when I need to do this. From the old world perspective, what we have now done, say for example, the guys that we currently have on the logistics piece, we've done a solution for them. So I know when I need to pick up. So either do a milk run or I do a lane-wise distribution. So we've tried to tell them that, boss, I will do about 350 kilometers per day with a TAT of 1. Anything about 350 becomes a TAT of 2. But we've curtailed ourselves and I've told them that, boss, the best that we will do is probably do a 700 kilometer radius because that is the best I can service you. Otherwise, my service will start to fail, which eventually means for somebody like a Bhaskar or somebody like Atul or Tata, their services will start to fail. So we've now categorized ourselves into figuring out where my strong points are based on the centers, the micro fulfillment centers that we have. Two, I have now decided, boss, what is the radius I would like to effectively work on. Three, I am now trying to figure out how do I put the EVs into play a lot more effectively in terms of being able to service these areas. So from a last mile delivery, these are 4 or 5 things that we've started doing. And I generally believe that given the little conversation that we've done with our existing vendors, we've now tried to change the model. Every single guy that we've approached to is quite happy to look at a solution there. So for example, like we were speaking, if a guy is looking for a delivery in a place like say Shimoga, but the challenge is whether it's me or whether it's a FedEx or whether it's a Gati or anybody else, the challenges of moving it to Shimoga is going to be the same. So what we are now trying to tell him is that, boss, we'll try and consolidate maybe with other transport vendors or alternatively with other vendors that we use to figure out, boss, what is the best way to do it. Most of these guys have now come back and said, boss, we're very happy to look at a solution-based thing. To decide it specifically for us, we will come back and tell you, boss, what are the pickup dates? What is the kind of volume that I'll be in a position to give you? 3, then you decide on how you want to do it, whether you will do it with, joint, co-load, what you want to do, deliver it. The only thing that has become is still a challenge, which probably Bhaskar and Rajiv will both agree, is adhering to the TAT. So, one, whether it's a B2B or whether it's a B2C, what earlier used to be 3, the desire now was from the customer side or as well as from the business side is to try and make it a one-day TAT. That's the only challenge that we are facing. But otherwise, last mile delivery, my personal view, this will become typically solutions driven. You will need to figure out what the vendor wants, especially in the case of e-com, where they probably have the Meeshos, where there is a, or the Zeptos, where there is a 10 million delivery. These become a lot more critical in terms of trying to figure out, boss, how much do I pick up and how much do I deliver. So what we do is instead of doing 1 milk run, which is what I think Bhaskar was saying, now we started doing 4 milk runs. So what I miss in the first one, I do the second one. What I miss in the second one, if there is a return, I pick it up in the third milk run and bring it back. So these are some things that we are trying to do, but these are early days. So probably with a little time and a more solutions based, I think we'll probably be in a better place to figure out how to do the last mile deliveries.
Got it. Got it. I think your mantra basically is being around having a customer-based solution and using technology to kind of optimize your last mile loads based on the inventory that's to be delivered. Interesting. Interesting. I think taking this point forward, right, to Dipanjan, who's more, he's from Ecom Express and more on the B2C side, right? Dipanjan, just taking cue from this question straight up, I think what are the challenges that you're seeing, right, in the last mile space? And also, I mean, also from a customer behavior standpoint, have you seen any changes while shipments are being delivered at the last mile doorstep? Good to have your perspectives on this.
Thanks, Varun. So first of all, I think Bhaskar and Rajiv and Mahesh covered it very well. Especially me and Bhaskar deal in similar kind of challenges. Hence, Bhaskar covered some of the points extremely elaborately. I think what has changed, I think, in terms of customers, in terms of their expectations, they have become more demanding. COVID was just a channel shift in terms of what used to get sold online and where it used to be sold online, etc. But I think good things have happened for the industry during that time. But the customers of late have become more and more demanding, and models like quick commerce, etc. Though I would agree to Bhaskar, we'll still have to wait and see, and the jury is yet out whether they are sustainable models or they'll actually are the right things to do. But customers today are extremely demanding. So that's one change that is constantly moving upwards, especially on the B2C side. An interesting thing is that nobody wants to pay for the value add. So that's another large challenge that we all have to talk about, maybe today, tomorrow, or whenever this is the right time, because all value adds for whoever runs a supply chain comes at a cost. So white gloves delivery that Rajiv had basically shown in his particular slide, white gloves delivery, whether we do a try and buy, whether we do a 10-minute delivery, or we do a high val delivery, or other product solutions that we do, requires a totally different kind of an approach, which is also a cost. So anyways, we'll keep that for a later date. But I think other typical challenges coming typically to the e-commerce industry, and as the first one that comes to my mind, and is basically the address. The address quality in India is a very large concern. Very large concern. It's a understated concern as the industry grew through the years. Today, the industry does around 2.8 billion shipments a year. If you think of it in the way it is supposed to grow to around 9 billion. I'm only talking about e-commerce, not taking in the quick commerce and the hyper-local growth in this. If you can imagine the kind of scale that we are looking at, and the percentage of shipments which basically fall into a bad address category today, and the percentage just keep on increasing towards the tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4, that people wala paid example is actually true. And the percentages could be upwards of 19-20% of bad address or not good address. And irrespective, now so far, if you look at the solutions that are there in the market, see, everybody ties a lot of things. We have Google Maps to use, you have Map My India to use, you have your own data science-led reverse geocoding products that you use. But there is yet a perfect solution to basically pin an address. So address pinning still remains a very large problem in today's world. Why this is a problem, I'll cover a little bit more about it. So let's say if we have to solve the last mile cost issue, or if we have to say the only two things that can help last mile cost is route density and productivity. If you can't pre-decide your route, and you can't pre-decide the number of shipments to be given to a particular guy and the number of exact time that he should take from going to pin A to pin B, you can't consistently bring it down. First, from a cost perspective. Second, from a RTO perspective, this is a big blocker to the growth. Today, the industry faces a very high RTO or return on COD shipments. If you look at the problem, this problem is basically challenging the fundamental of e-commerce. If typically what you see is if 100 is sold and 20 comes back as return and another 13 to 14 comes back as customer returns, which is post-delivery returns, then it's a huge problem to your bottom line, right? For everybody. And it's a problem for that the industry has to solve together. Unfortunately, in e-commerce, you don't get a lot of pins. In quick commerce, you still get pins because customers are ordering through apps where you get locations, etc. In e-commerce orders, you don't get a lot of pins. The geocode captured at the time of order taking, the percentage is low. So address remains one of the big problems. Different companies are trying to solve it in different ways. I think the second problem at the last mile, and specifically covering only after things that has reached the last mile delivery center and we are on the route to deliver it to the consignee. I think modes of connectivity between the delivery boy or delivery girl and the consignee and the connectivity percentage and the communication modes. I think though there has been a lot of innovation in that, but that still remains a challenge. I think if all of us have to work towards that, towards getting better communication modes with the consignee to enable first attempt conversions. That's a second challenge. I think there's a lot to be done in that as well. Third, I would say is from a not a challenge perspective. A lot of product, like going back to Mahesh's word, a lot of these things are basically products and solutions implemented in the last mile. If coming back to my point of cost and productivity, if we have to solve that part, all these have to work in tandem, and then solutions which you deploy for your business, which is typically around route optimization or zone optimization of a particular route, those will only work when these work properly, right? And that if you can't work that in the most efficient manner, then your productivity and route densities and cost will not consistently come down. So these three are broadly, I think, three broad last mile challenges which can be spoken about and understood in this forum.
Correct. I think that people ka paid is really that key element to find out where is that people ka paid, where is the customer sitting at the end
You
of
won't
it.
believe one of my most valued resources whom I talk to every day, even if I don't talk to my wife, is my data science head. On how to solve some of these.
Clearly. But interesting. No, I think these are real world problems, right? I mean, these are real world problems. These are real challenges that you have to tackle to, at the end of the day, not just support the ecosystem, but also kind of create a delight for the customer. Fair enough. I think that, and that interestingly brings me to Kushal, right? Kushal, so given the experience and you've seen a bit of the world, right? You understand how things have played out in different markets. What's your view and what's your take on the tech adoption in India versus other markets, right? And where do you think we are lacking or we are kind of ahead of the curve? I mean, what is your perspective?
Sure. Thanks, Varun. That's a good question. And just to start with that, Dipanjan, Here Technologies is also one of the pioneers in providing that particular location intelligence. You know, the few of the names of our competitors that you take. So just to bring that into perspective before I answer.
Yeah, I'm not patronizing anybody. So
okay. So talking about tech adaptability in India, and of course, being outside India and looking at the entire e-commerce explosion in Southeast Asia, especially for the last few years, and a few of the roles that I have done apart from here, I think definitely the platform companies, before getting themselves stamped into e-commerce, they used to call them a tech companies. Means Lazada still call themselves a tech company doing e-commerce. So there are tons of things that they have tried, and I'm happy to talk about that, but I'm also looking at the clock. Couple of things that really stands out, and I think in some shape and form, other panelists have covered it. But the topic of multi-directional communication is super important, where a platform, a seller, a buyer, and a rider can communicate in real time. And that can really have a lot of efficiencies while, let's say, the parcel is actually on the road. You know, and it can have impacts right on the first attempt percentage conversion, a lot of mechanics that controls actually cost. The other area where a lot of tech advancements that's happening, and I'm pretty sure people are looking at in India, is like confirming the slots before the delivery is out. Whenever I am home and I'm trying to transact online and getting something from Amazon, I get the whole day as a slot. So that's something that's probably something that needs to be looked at, and that can also have a lot of traction. Last but not the least, there's a very important application of location intelligence in the whole operational run and plan. And now I'm pretty sure Mahesh and Dipanjan and Bhaskar, I mean, there are some shape and form of location that's already used. But right from the pre-planning, execution, and post-planning phase, companies are actually investing a lot in the real-time visibility of everything that's moving. So of course, right from the massive pre-planning when you are actually doing your runs in the morning, and then how the real-time visibility affects your run plan efficacy during the day. And this particular ideology can really go into when you are talking about EV conversion, because just to give you an example and picking up the note from Mahesh, that the delivery methodology remains the same, but there are a lot of variables that needs to be looked at. Of course, the number of kilometer coverage is one parameter, but let's say if the particular vehicle needs to recharge, not only the radii and the coverage of the EV station is a critical intel point, but also the availability of that particular recharge node is also a very, very important data for that particular node to completely happen. So these are a few of the examples where companies, in especially I would say little bit matured e-commerce markets, are putting their money. And of course, then we can talk about drones and autonomous vehicles that are driving through. And in Singapore, we have seen a lot of trials that's been happening recently. And there are a lot of companies, startups that's actually building upon that. But again, the point is, with all these advancements, means we are bringing options to the buyers who are generating the GMV. And everybody keeps on saying the customer is getting demanding, but probably the innovations and the companies for their particular thrust of getting more market capture, they bring all these options in front of a customer. So in a way, the market is asking the customers and the clients to demand more and keep on asking for more. And obviously the particular cost per delivery or cost per parcel for the last mile pace means again is growing up. I mean, Southeast Asia is a good example where there's a lot of burn that's happening, and especially coming in from the last mile piece. Of course, the platforms kind of compensate for that, but let's say any returns is a cost, and any failed delivery probably generated returns is also a cost. So how do you balance it? How do you manage your NPS and probably your CX and SX, at the all level, using those, visibility, real-time visibility, and the power of location is something that's coming in very, very profoundly these days. So those are my 2 cents on that.
Right. No, interesting, Kushal. I think innovation really has been one of the reasons where customer has kind of been wanting to ask for more as well. Right? Customers aware on what's happening around and is learning even more and is demanding further even more.
Yeah.
One interesting point that you touched upon was on EVs, and actually I would just kind of take that forward. Rajiv also mentioned this in his presentation on sustainability. And Dipanjan, this is more for you to start with, and everyone can chip in as well. So what's your take? I think sustainability has been an important element, right? We have seen companies try a bit on the last mile piece on EVs. There has been some amount of success. There has been some challenges. Would you like to talk about some of them and give your perspective, right? I also know that Ecom Express has done something interesting around creating some EV network.
I think it's not only about EVs, it's sustainability across your supply chain. There's a lot of scope in the last mile because that's where your number of vehicles that you run in the last mile are very high, right? In terms of bikers and EVs, in all the forms of sustainable vehicles that are there, EV seems to be the fastest moving in terms of the quantum of number of vehicles that you can procure, and there's some discussion at least happening on the ecosystem around it. I think we as an organization have taken kind of a pledge to convert at least 60-70% of our last mile vehicles into electric vehicles by 25. And have moved forward with the journey and have started with the journey in certain cities. While I can say that it has been a good experience, but the road hasn't been without bumps. There are various challenges, right from explaining to a delivery boy that why should he use an EV, and it starts from the simplistic thing of that. And please understand, some of it is also used as hooks to basically attract a guy, right? There are cities where a lot of people. So if you compare the number of people who own two-wheelers in the country to the number of footers who are available for a courier job, the ratio is like a 20% to 80%. So there will be a time with the kind of situations that are coming in a lot of cities where people will try to use the EV as a hook to basically get in people. I'm sure that a lot of us are already doing that. But the ecosystem is yet not developed, Varun. To be very, very true, EVs looks and sounds very interesting. Places where you basically open your delivery centers, right from starting to get the landlord to agree to, get to give you the kind of electricity connection to run charging stations, etc., to people adopting to the kind of routes that the EV can cover, to the kind of productivity that you would expect him to cover in terms of the route. So there are various challenges and stages to get in success. If on a scale of 10, if I would say that if we wanted to go to 5 right now, we have only achieved 2.5 because of multiple things. It's not a dearth of effort, but it's a dearth of a complete ecosystem being available. Plus, there are other forms of sustainability, as I mentioned. For example, we have converted a lot of our pickup vehicles, especially in Delhi NCR, into CNG vehicles. At least all our pickup vehicles, at least not the carting vehicles, are all converted into CNG vehicles. A lot of our short runs from Delhi NCR, from Bangalore, are also running on CNG. That's also there, which you can't have it for the long runs. So at least on the short run period you can. So these are a few of the things that we have done, especially from the sustainability perspective.
Right. But Dipanjan, what do you, any view on it on cost? Do you see that kind of impacting the cost in any material way?
In the long run, I think it will be beneficial to the cost of delivery from an EV perspective. If you start using a lot of EVs in your last mile, at least the first-hand math says that it will be beneficial, at least from the fossil fuel.
So broadly, sorry to interrupt, Varun. Our assessment is if you take an EV to do last mile, it costs you about 1 rupee a kg. If you use the conventional like a Tata Ace that takes about a ton, that comes to almost about 3.5. So what Dipanjan says makes a lot of sense. So what we are now trying to do is that keep the radius at 60, which is where the EV cutoff is. And then anything longer than we try and do with an Ace so that and convert it to CNG and then try and run it. But I agree with there is what he's saying, there is a lot of merit to adopting EV.
Right. And Bhaskar, I think even Flipkart has been at the forefront, right? I think on all the sustainability initiatives, including EV, right? Any inputs that you would like to share?
I guess I think both Dipanjan and Mahesh has covered it from the practical challenges of EV adoption. Okay. I think a couple of things. First, I think businesses understand that adopting sustainable technology is not only the need of the hour or leaving the planet better, but it also today is at a place where it is cost effective. Point one. Point two, I believe, is we also understand that this model is not matured enough. There are a lot of nuances and things will evolve as we go forward. For example, in last mile, people talked about the radius, right? And I think Kushal talked about also the kind of charging infrastructure available for someone to actually expand the radius, correct? There are instances also, if you see the way the vehicle is designed, is it customized for your need? Okay. Unlike a Tata Ace or something which has been there for quite some time, you know how to load it. The EV vehicles are far more compact, right? There is a challenge. And then when you in e-commerce, you handle shipments of various shapes and sizes. So your utilization of that whole EV becomes a challenge, right? Third, that there are various business models. Okay. Right from a biker who would go to an EV and it is his investment, to somebody who's an entrepreneur and he has his own EVs and he wants to give it for use, to somebody who's just a EV supplier. So there's multiple models which is existing. And I think every passing day, new models are also mushrooming, right? New suppliers, new models, new efficiencies, because I don't think so today the EVs have reached a stage where the equipments are very efficient. This is a journey which will continue, the size of the battery, the quality of the battery, the number of recharges it can take, the number of hours. And if imagine your charging station is far off, by the time you reach the hub itself, you have consumed a part of your charge, which means your this thing has gone down, right? So in my mind, this is a very interesting space. In my mind, the good news is, and there's a lot of good news here, things are looking so bright out here, is everybody is committed, everybody understands the value, and it makes business sense, as Mahesh spoke about it. I would say that wait and watch for a lot of actions out here. Okay. And I mean, just to give a kind of an adjacencies, even today, personal cars, people have started moving to electric vehicles, right? So that shows the kind of, adoption possibility. Now, if you look at it, only the other part of it is, whole this conversation is around metro or, big tier 1 towns. Even now, if you look at tier 2 and tier 3, the infrastructure still doesn't exist. So it's a long journey. Things will evolve. We are there as Flipkart. I mean, not only in the last mile, right from first mile with our platinum certified, Asia's largest fulfillment center, to end, we are looking at reducing the carbon footprint in whatever way we can, so that at the end of the day, there is the cost of doing business on planet reduces significantly, right? We don't end up spoiling the planet. And the fact remains, even if, having worked in manufacturing in the past, is that it's the transportation which has a higher carbon footprint than even manufacturing, right? So, and as Dipanjan said, we talked about CNGs, you talk about bulk carriers through railways where speed is not important. There are multiple models available. And I think, Varun, guys are, the businesses are cognizant of it. And as the algorithm matures, we will settle down to a certain combination of using multi-carrier models with a certain mix, while keeping the customer service at the center of this whole conversation.
Right. I think that's important, right? I mean, it's an important perspective that we leave the planet in a manner in which we at least received it, right? That's the best that at least we can try and attempt to do. And it's an important perspective to all of us. I mean, for us to bear in mind as we progress in this world, right? I think taking that point forward, right? I just wanted to talk this point on technologies and also talk about some of the innovation that you're seeing on last mile. See, there have been multiple initiatives that's been talked about. Of course, some of these initiatives like drone delivery has been spoken about. Kushal just mentioned a lot of testing happening in Singapore. You heard that a bit even in India. And there's a lot of other innovation, right? Even in smaller basic stuffs like locker-based delivery, alternate PUDO channels. Where do you see the market, right? I think, how do you see the market trending on this front? Do you guys see the customer still expects it to happen at the doorstep, or there's going to be some maturity, some change, not just in the style of delivery, but just the overall pattern of how it's being delivered, transported, etc.?
Was this to me?
It's an open question. I think.
Okay. I think if I can go first, See, as I personally believe, and don't have data here, there are certain things which are kind of cardinal, which won't change. One is the service at the doorstep. There is a certain expectation, and that does not change. And then there is this the source, right? And how do I kind of, from the source to the customer, how do I make it more efficient? Now, of the various models like locker delivery and all, while it has matured in certain markets, in India, it's a long way to go. Okay, at least from my experience, we have personally dabbled in large commercial complexes where you have multiple offices, people place orders and you have lockers. So you don't have to wait, they go and pick up their shipments, right? We tried it. At this point in time, it was not making the cost leverage, right? In a way, and there was nothing which kind of, even if you go to those hubs, right? And I have seen that in places where there is a agglomeration of commercial offices, say the cyber hub of Gurgaon and places like that, you'll find the e-commerce guys sitting like in a shop, and kind of people coming and picking up their shipments. So it's some way to go out there, because the models also have to be cost effective, because one thing, remember, the cost pressure is always going to be high, and last mile is an expensive proposition, right? Drone deliveries and technologies of that, even Flipkart has a lab, and Flipkart is doing a lot of work around that. Okay, I'm sure that it is not going to be a straight thing. There will be government regulations around that as well in future. I'm sure it's not going to be a cakewalk. Just to go back on the EV part, you see a lot of activity, because in the last couple of years, government has also come out with a lot of schemes which promotes EV, right? EV is not that something which came up recently. EV was there prior to that also. They are trying to make it affordable with the fossil fuel prices going up and so on and so forth. So these areas are very interesting areas. Autonomous vehicle, I don't know how many of those autonomous vehicle works on the Indian roads, and with the cattle suddenly crossing, and how will the autonomous vehicle actually behave? We will have to figure out all those mechanisms, right? But yes, I think the good news is, I do believe that this is an exciting space. I believe that people are kind of invested in it. Each logistic service provider of like e-commerce guys are investing heavily in this. So there is people who are working on drone technology. There are people who are tying up with some of the technology provider in trying to customize a solution which fits their bill. So I do see something will work, but what will not change is the experience which a customer wants, right? How do you replace the human touch at the doorstep is going to be difficult in my mind. That's something which may not change overnight, where, for example, in a tier 2 town, a person asks for iPhone and he or she wants to know how do I start, a smartphone, and how do I start it, correct? Or I have to have a return, how does it work? Because one of the things we didn't talk about this is, in an impersonal supply chain or even in a regular supply chain, the number of frauds is also substantial, okay, along the entire supply chain. And those who have worked in e-commerce can vouch for it, that frauds is not something which you can just take lightly. It doesn't make sense to run a business with the kind of frauds we see. So you need to have a human touch point and maker and checker at certain interfaces as well at this point in time, till we develop a technology to address that. That's my 2 cents on that. Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Anything to add, Dipanjan? Can't hear you, Dipanjan. Can't hear you.
You're on mute or what?
Can't hear you. I think if Mr. Mahesh, if you would like to chip in, right? I think how do you see this?
This customer expectation will continue to probably scale up. The only thing that needs to be matched is the cost that will keep having to go down consistently, irrespective of whether fossil fuels go up, whether your battery costs X, whether it is still worth the while. So these two are given. And I also take what Bhaskar says. The challenge here is actually how quickly can you move to autonomous? With cattle on the road, I don't know how quickly that adoption is going to happen. But I would tend to agree with what Bhaskar says. That is probably one area that needs to be worked on. But these two are given premises. One, customer expectation will continue to rise and costs will have to continue to go down.
Yeah, good point. But Varun, probably just to add on to what Mahesh said, obviously there's a lot of innovation happening and the adoption is progressive. But I'm a firm believer that the adoption of any technology to solve a mass problem would have to be differentiated on, let's say, your top tier cities, which probably accounts for the maximum GMV, and the tier two, tier three. So the cattle on the road problem may be a tier two problem. Means I don't see cattle on the road, let's say in a Gurgaon expressway or probably in a cyber city area. So those hot pockets will be a good source of a lot of activity and traffic. So there has to be patched version of solution that needs to be applied. And one shape and form, somehow location will play a very important role to create these analytics and giving the sheer power and control back to the operators to look into these different venues, that where is the exact match of that particular tech versus the problem that we are trying to construct. Just wanted to add that.
Fair point. Dipanjan, can't hear you still. I think you're trying to say something, but I can't hear you still. But I think, Kushal, fair point, right? I think you're saying a more micro cluster based approach using tech will kind of essentially drive the innovation also, right? I think that's quite an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you.
Some tech issue here. Anyway, I think I heard Bhaskar and the others, Mahesh and Kushal as well. I think India is a very different country. My perspective is, and to your question, Kushal, there are cows on near Cyber City as well. So
okay.
the problem with not the problem, the uniqueness in India is you have tier 1 metro, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 all in the same pin code in a way. It's a very different geography to solve for. So that's one. Second is not everything can be copied from outside and just put it as is here. It won't happen. It won't happen in a scale, in a ladder of solving product and tech problems. If drones are at maybe a 10 or 9, we are still currently at 3 and 4. I think we have many other problems to solve before somebody actually says that, okay, now a drone can do this, not a human. And the fourth uniqueness about this country, we are 130 crores, soon to be 150 crores. Though we find problems in hiring manpower in certain pockets, but I don't think a drone can ever replace a manpower very soon in this country. In terms of,
and for sure, we have to get the cow off the road.
Yeah, we have to get the cow off the road, but that's another question. That's another discussion I don't want to enter.
Let's not have cows in this discussion. Yeah,
I think very interesting path ahead in trying to solve problems as we move ahead, both on the number 3 problems, and good that, like Bhaskar mentioned, Flipkart already has a Flipkart lab. We have a small team trying to do such things in terms of at least talking about drones. Not yet put drones into use, but at least people are thinking about all that. People are thinking about all that and how to put them into use, at least maybe in some geographies, if not all.
Right. So I think it's what I understand. Essentially, it's going to happen. It's a matter of when and not if, right? It's only a matter of when that will kind of play out. Clearly, cost is going to be a key consideration, given that we are a large population, manpower intensive country, and I think there's enough labor available to kind of take care of these last mile times. And to be fair, logistics is one of the largest jobs generator, right? I think a lot of opportunity that comes out through this sector for the bottom of the pyramid, right? If you think about it, a very labor intensive sector. No, fair point. So just a couple of questions that I see actually has come from the audiences as well, right? So first question, what financial pressures are being put on supply chain by creating artificial deadlines in terms of 10-minute delivery, 20-minute deliveries. So what cost pressures are ultimately being played out? And I can ask Dipanjan and Mahesh to kind of start with this, because from a service provider standpoint, if there is any perspective to share on this question.
I think I had mentioned this earlier, Varun. I think every value-added service has a cost associated to it. You can look away from that cost for a period, and you can say that I'm trying to build that particular. I'm trying to build demand. I'm trying to aggregate demand. I'm trying to reach that sweet point of density. But if something does not look on the whiteboard profitable on day zero with a certain scale, it will never look profitable. It's a simple fundamental to be followed. I don't think people should be chasing something without thinking that who will bear the cost for it. It's not only about quick commerce, it's about normal e-commerce as well. Today, if India has to really, if we all have to believe in the Indian e-commerce story, and the next growth is going to come from the next 350 million users, or let's say 200 million users that are going to get added, they are not going to buy mobiles every day. So the ASPs will go to a 300, 400 rupees kind of a sweet point, which we are already seeing dropping, right? The ASPs of the industry have dropped drastically. Now, is it possible for somebody to sell a 400 rupees item? Is there margin everywhere across to pay at least $1 plus to somebody who is handling logistics and also make profit out of the transaction? I think somebody somewhere has to decouple the logistics cost to the product cost while selling that, right? I think that will also come, and then things that are value added will become value added. For example, a year back when quick commerce wasn't there, and nothing against the model, by the way, we do a lot of dark stores and some quick commerce as well, and we do a lot of warehousing for quick commerce for the very large guys as well, and including Flipkart in some cases in dark stores. Nothing against the model, but I think the way in India, especially because of the consumer pressures, the way we develop models is slightly incorrect. We scale it up and we don't know how to make money out of it or charge convenience fee out of it, which is where a lot of models after a certain while doesn't look profitable. I think fundamentally it's time to look at models which can make money at the high scale and then grow it up. Supply chain is it's not tech. A lot of times the PE community or the investor community basically says that it's a tech-driven logistics company. A logistics company is always a logistics company. Tech is an enabler in the logistics company. An enabler, and tech is an enabler in any industry. In certain industries, tech could be a enabler which could like make or break your cost competitiveness or product superiority. In certain companies, it might not be. But the cost of supply chain can only go down with density. There is no other. We can break our heads around with trying whatever we want to do. Inflation is not going anywhere. The warehouse costs, if you could compare it to 2019, 20, 21, 22, it is appreciated by at least a 10% every year, or even more than that because of the input cost of steel and everything. So if you have to make it real, the real cost of logistics is only increasing. You could only get benefits of density and leveraging benefits of density. So all that we spoke about, right routing, right address, will contribute to 20% of better efficiencies. Scale and leverage will bring in 80% of better efficiencies in cost. Right. And that is the only lever, but it can go down to a certain extent, but it can't become zero, right? So we'll have to decouple it with the product cost and the logistics cost or the convenience fee.
Right. I think the value of the shipment is going to be critical, right? At the end of the day, that will demand on how much of logistics cost can it absorb.
I'll give you an example. I'll just take 30 seconds more. I was chatting with a founder of one of the largest, you can say, social commerce marketplaces. And the vision looks to be that I want to sell something of 10 rupees to somebody. That's my ultimate vision. I'm saying, okay, that's great, but you'll have to decouple it, right? I can offer you a lower rate than what I'm offering today, but I won't pick up, I won't deliver. Let the guy come and pick it up and let the seller come and drop it off. Let him use my network. let him go and just let it be a self pickup. When somebody wants to door delivery, give me maybe 20-25 rupees extra.
Yeah, separate the service from the product altogether.
It has to be there. If you're trying to take out everything from that product margin, the product margins are thinning to an extent. Think about grocery. A year back, grocery, and one of the leaders in grocery always used to say that it does not make sense selling less than 1400 basket size.
Yeah.
To deliver it to your doorstep. Today, people are ordering dhania on quick commerce here.
Correct. I think that's an interesting point. And Bhaskar, just want to check with you, right? I mean, are you seeing a trend where customers are willing to pay? I mean, Flipkart also has an grocery segment, and do you see customers are willing to pay? And actually, and to that, Kushal, also, if you can chip in on how you've seen the evolution of customers' willingness to pay and in a global scenario, right? How has that evolved? Bhaskar?
Well, let me make an honest confession. The grocery part of the business is a little alien to me. Okay, it's not something I deal with, so probably my insights will be pretty limited. But just I can build on a couple of things which Dipanjan said, and I kind of resonate with it. One is the ASPs is going down significantly, right? At least I have seen it in the last 3 years. ASP has tumbled down. Initially we thought that because of the pandemic, people are kind of getting anything and everything on e-commerce, but I think that's also a habit forming situation, right? You just go and put it on the app and you get whatever you want. Yeah. And well, I do understand that that logistics has some dead cost, and the fact that our density is where it is today, right? But I think that's also a problem for us to solve. And I'm saying it from a little further away, saying that how do I kind of ensure that I am able to offer that service? Because if I don't offer that service, Varun, someone else will offer it at a certain point in time. Someone will crack the algorithm. So should I say that something at $10, for some customer in Pathankot, I will not cart it all the way from Bangalore. Okay. I'll probably start getting some kind of a restriction on what can be serviced within what geography. Maybe working in e-commerce and just beyond a logistics service provider, I also had the advantage of what discoveries I can offer on my platform, right? If you are looking for something, I will connect you to a local seller rather than get it something from some other places, right? And gradually, as Dipanjan says, and if I understand the underlying story behind this is, that if we continue to work the way we are, we will very soon be unsustainable from a business point of view, right? So if that is the case, there would be times where we will kind of start charging customers for a certain kind of value we are providing. Now, for that to happen, one thing is very important. We should be able to deliver that value consistently and continuously. We need to get into that zone, right? I can't charge for a service, value-added service, where I am not kind of competent enough to deliver it day in, day out, right? Now, that's going to be very, very critical to build credibility around that. And once we are able to do that, and if there is a latent need for that, I'm sure charging will come in. I think I'm sure that it won't be free of cost. But we in India, I can also say that we have seen things, and I think a panelist referred to that what worked for the Western world need not necessarily work for India. We have also seen our customer behaviors are also not similar to what the Western world is, right? We expect them to behave in a certain way, and free mein milta hai to kyun nahi, is something which everybody would be asking for. In a way, it's a good problem to solve for the business. That makes us far more efficient. It forces us to look at all wastages. How do we kind of become more and more efficient, right? Those questions will still remain, and I don't restrict it to logistics. I think it applies for all the businesses, right? Only point is that we have probably not solved for it. Today, the problem looks big because the way the demand is going, the expectation is growing versus our ability to service that expectation. The gap is pretty big, and we've not been able to narrow the gap as quickly as we thought we could. Yeah, because by the time we said, okay, high ASP, we are bringing down our logistics cost, the ASP started dropping and then the whole maths changed, right? So on and so forth. So those things will happen. By the way, but Flipkart, you can shop grocery at $1 also. Now, how do they make money is something we need to figure out. But yeah, you can shop groceries at $1. I was in the last mile node just before this call and I saw a shipment at 1 rupee, transfer from Delhi to Hyderabad. So I don't know how those things are there and will remain. Okay. So
Yeah. So I think that's a discussion for another day altogether, right?
absolutely.
On the line, Varun, I also don't know when we used to do this 10-minute deliveries. I take what Bhaskar and Dipanjan say. I don't know whether it's an unrealistic expectation that it will get delivered. So maybe it takes 15 minutes. The point is, I agree with what Bhaskar and Dipanjan are saying. You need to do a lot of work to figure out how do you deliver it in a cost-effective method in 10 minutes. But somewhere along the line, I also tend to feel that it's a slightly, it's one way of grabbing market share because you told the customer that you'll get in 10 minutes. So whether if he chooses not to do a Flipkart, Amazon, XYZ, and he chooses to do a new PQR, it's one way of grabbing eyeballs, it's one way of getting business, but I don't know whether it's an unrealistic expectation that you said. And the kind of pressure that it puts on the system, which is unbelievable. This 10-minute, I don't know whether it's a rhetoric that will continue. Two, I agree, we need to solve for it. But maybe it's not 10 minutes, it needs to be 20 minutes or 25 minutes where the break even happens. Or alternatively, like Bhaskar says, at some point in time, I'll have to tell the customer, if you need a 10-minute, then you have to set the expectation, right? It won't cost you 10, it might cost you 10 plus 15 additional. So, I don't know, maybe time and tech, maybe these are solvable issues, but today looks like an unrealistic expectation.
Correct. Just to add on and probably share some outlook what's happening in Southeast Asia and Singapore. Obviously, this 10, 15, 20 minutes are different service levels. And more often than not on quick commerce, the marketplace and platform operations gives you these options that, let's say, if you really want something in 10 minutes, you can add a certain fee. And then the algorithm actually activates any crowdsourced guy, which is in your neighborhood, who can go in a certain shop and pick that particular stuff for you. And then you can have those 10 minutes as a different price point, 20 minutes different price point, and then the standard SLA of 60 minutes or 90 minutes. So those fulfillment options are always there, but totally depends on, again, if you really want to see that, okay, if I want to have, let's say, a bottle of Coke, which costs around $2.50, and then I'm paying a delivery charge of $3.50 on top. But it's that the utility that I have guests at home, and everybody knows the reasoning that this can trigger, right? And people can have those decision points on the spot. So, but what I'm trying to explain is the options are there, the service levels are there, and the algorithms are there. It exists, means in these markets at least, where you can have those permutation combination done, and a lot of possibilities are there on the table.
And Kushal, do they charge the customers for this kind of various service levels?
Yeah, the customer is directly charged on that.
Okay.
So he has an option that if you really go to, so I used to manage Redmart, which is Lazada's grocery division for 6 countries also. And where we had, like, let's say if you really, not only like, it was not like a 10 minutes delivery, but let's say if you want something in the next 2 hours or an AM or a PM delivery option, then we would have that particular premium of $4 that would be activated. So the order gets prioritized, and we had our algorithms which will allocate it to the nearest van and the nearest hub that it would have. So these options are there, but I was giving you an example of Grab or Deliveroo or Food Panda, which is more activated in this quick commerce market, which have all these thresholds.
And to what Kushal is saying, I think these experiments are happening in India as well, right? So Swiggy, Instamart, for example, they charge you a premium if you want a quick delivery. If you want this quick service delivery, they charge you a premium. If you're willing to pay for it, you have it, right? But it solves a problem. There are people who want to solve their problem as well, right?
Yeah.
Bread for breakfast,
Right.
what have you.
Yeah, and also, Varun, just to add on to the Dipanjan points on correlating the product value to the logistics cost, right? And there are very interesting discussions around this, because let's say if you want to order an iPhone, now it has compressed into a pack, which is this. So once you go into the logistics tons into kilometers or a CBM into kilometers kind of a pricing model based on tiers, right? I mean, it's the cost of actually moving that particular item on that particular kilometers should be, I mean, it's in thousands of dollars, and the actual cost of transport would be still less. But again, the value versus the fraud mechanism that was presented. I mean, while in Lazada, I had like multiple hundreds and thousands of cases where soap bars were actually put on iPhone cases, and it was shipped all across in Christmas. And because the volumes are so high in those campaigns of 11/11 and 10/9/9, nobody does that. It's all set to contain basis, right? And the weight is right, everything is done, and then you get into that particular stuff. So yeah, so just wanted to add on to Dipanjan's points.
Thanks. I think that's a complete discussion for another day, right? I think we can just go on and on. Such an interesting.
That's a different industry altogether, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a different industry of alag fraud CEOs
Right.
and all sitting.
Right. We'll have to have a separate set of panelists for that. Anyways, I'm just being conscious of time. We're already short by a minute. I think thanks everyone. Brilliant presentation from Rajiv Pamaya. Great contribution from all the panelists as well. Thank you. Goes like that the problem is going to continue. The customers are going to keep demanding more, and the challenges of operations are going to continue to remain, right? I think it's the life that we have to live with, and the technology that will come and support us in various parts wherever it can at best. Thank you, everyone. Brilliant session. Was great hosting you guys for this event. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Varun, for moderating.